What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are here with one that is going to be short, sweet, straight to the point. This is my 53-man roster prediction for the Detroit Lions. Look, I don't know how quickly I need to get this video out there because I don't know when they're going to start making cuts exactly, but I know the deadline is August 29th at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, and I'm assuming that cuts are going to start rolling in, moves are going to continue to be made, and we'll probably add a couple of players as well, maybe just to the practice squad, but I think there's a possibility that when cuts go down after we get kind of that 53, that there's still some shuffling within the roster of players that we want to add, and of course, there could still be trades that happen. We've seen a few of those go down recently, so I'm just going to get this video out there quickly. We just did a live stream with Rad. He got me thinking a little bit, and this is my prediction for the Lions 53-man roster. This is what I think it's going to look like. Obviously, I'm going to be wrong. Like, I'm pretty darn sure this is not going to be exact, but it's just a prediction based on what I've seen. I don't have a ton of time here, so I'm not going to go through and like break down each player individually, but instead just kind of give you a look at what I'm thinking. So here we go. First off, quarterback, we have Jared Goff and Teddy Bridgewater. I think the Lions will keep two. Sudfeld, unfortunately, looks like it could be a serious injury. He was carted off. I don't know what it is there. I thought he'd end up being our like emergency quarterback on game days. That doesn't count towards the 53, but that's something to really keep an eye on. I don't know if they're completely sold on Martinez being that guy. I mean, it is your emergency quarterback, so, you know, maybe you get Hendon Hooker back at some time and you feel like he could do that, but if it's a serious injury with Sudfeld, I don't know how sold they are on Adrian Martinez. I thought the biggest issue in this last game was really timing. It's a play to Avery Davis that was like late, him getting out of the break and kind of finding the hole in the zone, and it almost feel like Martinez kind of panicked a little bit and just threw it. There was also a boot play where he had more open on kind of like a little flat and he did not throw the ball. So I thought there was like little things like that, and obviously he's working with different receivers. Dude didn't even play last week and his practice reps haven't really been there. Now obviously I haven't seen it the past week, but when I was there at camp, they just weren't there. I thought timing was just off a little bit. So I don't know how they feel about that. Clearly they felt like Sudfeld was going to be like the 3, but because of the injury, that one feels like it's a little bit up in the air. But I think they're rolling with 2, and it's Teddy, it's Goff. I'm so happy we have Teddy Bridgewater. I'm going with 3 running backs. I'm going with Craig Reynolds, David Montgomery, and Jahmyr Gibbs. I would have loved to put Jefferson here. I thought he played well in week 2, and he does have a special teams impact potentially. But because of the injury and not playing this past week, I just left him out, and I think he's a guy that can be brought back to the practice squad. Like last year, we saw it. He made the initial 53, but was cut shortly after and brought back to the practice squad. I think we're going to want to add our practice squad running back. You want more depth than 3 backs, but I think it'll come from that position. I think Benny Snell, you kind of had a feeling what he was. Pretty good in pass protection this past game. Ozigbo, we've seen a little bit, but I don't think anybody's like cemented themselves into saying, hey, I have to be the 4th running back. So I'm going with 3, and I think they keep Kabinda for the flexibility for a fullback role on kick return unit, and to be a lead back that caught a pass this past week. Now, one of his lead blocks were bad. I mean, he got lit up by the linebacker, but I think he ends up making the team. At tight end, I have 3. I think this one's very simple. Sam Laporta makes it, James Mitchell makes it, Brock Wright makes it, and I think it stays right there. In the past, we've kept 2. We've kept more. I think we go with 3 this year. At receiver, this is where it gets interesting. I'm going light here. I'm only keeping 5. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Kyle Freeman, Josh Reynolds, Marvin Jones Jr., and Antoine Green. Now, one big part of this will be when Jameson Williams comes back, and I'm sure at that time, there will be other ways to create a roster space. I'm sure there's going to be injuries, unfortunately, so we'll be able to create that opening to get him back. But initially, I had Chase Cota before this past week, and not to say that Chase Cota is necessarily bad. He was still productive consistently throughout the game, good route running ability there, but I think there's a little bit of lack of separation when you see him get out of breaks. I think he's shown pretty good hands. Obviously, he had the easy drop in the end zone, which just seemed like he just was not ready for the pass, and then, of course, the one that was a little bit behind him on a slant wasn't easy, but for me, I don't know that it was enough to necessarily make me, like, super concerned that we wouldn't be able to get him back on the practice squad. Maybe we wouldn't, but I don't know if it was enough that he's done where I feel like I can't get him back. And kind of similar with Dylan Drummond here. He played by far his best game. He wasn't dominant throughout the entire preseason, but played his best game. Now, I do feel like what really impressed me the most with him is what he could do with the ball in his hands. The run after catch ability. Even another guy missed this past week. He was very effective in that role. He had his best day in terms of pass catching, 5 receptions, called all the passes that hit his hands this past week, had a nice dive and grab. My favorite one was when he sat down on the sticks and basically plucked it after kind of slipping at the top of the route. However, I decided I'm going to roll with the 5. I think Green cemented himself, and we'll see if we can get back on the practice squad there. But I think the next up is Dylan Drummond and, of course, Chase Cota. At offensive line, I'm still rolling with 8. Now, I do feel like, and we're going to talk about this, there's really 3 guys, kind of 2, that I think it's going to come down to for me. And Matt Nelson is one of those guys. I think Matt Nelson helped himself. I thought week 2 was much better. Swap positions, he moved to right tackle, Ifedi moved to left tackle. And also this past week, which was not great, but I thought, you know, he gave up some hurries, but he didn't really give give up any blown blocks. He also showed a good pickup, I thought, on stunt recognition, even though he was drilled back a little bit. And he's been an effective run blocker. I think they like Matt Nelson. So by the time we're all said and done with this 53 that you're going to see here, I probably am going to have him as the last guy that makes the roster. But there is a real part of me that feels like you could get him back on the practice squad. I'm not like extremely confident, but there is a part of me that feels like he could be brought back. Swoboda didn't look great this week, which was unfortunate because that was kind of like an insurance plan, in my opinion, for a practice squad spot, and he didn't look great. So, you know, that one feels a little bit more like there could definitely be some more additions. Source to look better, so I feel good about him making it, and I think Ifedi has proven himself that he can be an okay swing tackle, so I think we lean into that. On the defensive line, I got Ali McNeil, Roderick Martin, Josh Paschal, Isaiah Buggs, John Kaminsky, Levi Onwuzurike, who showed a lot of push-pull wins, second effort pass rush wins. The run defense still hit and miss. They seem to get really aggressive, a lot of one-gapping, upfield style when he gets out there. But we just need more consistency against the run, of course. Hopefully he gets that with time. And I'm also keeping Benito Jones. I am very concerned that Benito does not make it back. Since we claimed him from the Miami Dolphins, he's been with the Lions. And I feel like he's had a good, not great preseason. There's been some things to like. There's been some lack of finish there, but there's been ability to play through blocks. And he's also shown awareness when you talk about pass rush lanes. We've had some hit and miss there from Romeo, from different guys, but he's shown real awareness, I think, in those situations. So it's been good, not great, but I feel like he does give me kind of a security blanket in terms of we still got size as a nose tackle. If Broderick Martin isn't ready, and he's been inconsistent throughout the preseason, moving laterally, playing on the front side of zone plays, but he's also shown some good. Even this past week, he made a good play on a 2nd and 1, I believe it was. Really good penetration upfield. It just needs some seasoning, clearly, to his game. It was kind of understood, I think, we brought him in. So I'm keeping Benito Jones. I don't want to lose the guy, so I'm keeping him around there, and we're going kind of heavy on the front 7, clearly. Hutchinson, Harris, Houston, Romeo, Julian. Julian is a very interesting one. I thought Julian played better than Romeo this past game, but I don't think Romeo goes anywhere, though I think this was arguably Romeo's worst game. There just wasn't enough as a pass rusher. There was, I thought, some good as a run defender, which was nice. You know, he was kind of dominant against tight ends, and he had the one, like, assisted sack where he beat a tight end on a play, where James Houston also had a sack beating a tackle, but it wasn't great from Romeo. From Julian's standpoint, you got a couple splash plays in there. Still want more consistency as a run defender in terms of not just setting the edge, but finishing. Also, as a pass rusher, you'll get some occasional splash wins. He's got the dip, he's got the bend. I think if you let Julian go, you're not getting him back. Like, someone is going to claim him, I think. I could be wrong. We know he has an injury background. Maybe he doesn't. And I think this is a spot where the Lions could really feel like, hey, we don't need to keep 5 here because we know Kaminsky will play on the edge, and we know that Paschal will play on the edge. However, I'm rolling with all 5. I don't think it's a great shot that any of those guys make it back if they're let go initially, so I'm bringing them all back. At linebacker, I think this 5 has been the most cemented. I think it's pretty clear. Also, note, this is not like depth chart order. It's just the players at the position, so don't really worry about the order. I just kind of put them in here. But Duracell, Campbell, Rodrigo, Barnes, and JRM. I think it's pretty clear-cut. I think Trevor might be the 6th linebacker, but I don't think he's really in the conversation. This past week was kind of up-down. Showed some good against the run. He also showed some special teams ability throughout the entire preseason, but coverage has been kind of hit and miss. All right, there was some good and there was some bad this past week, and Anthony Pittman, I thought, had a really rough week. So I'm going with those 5. At cornerback, this is where things get tough but interesting. And shout out to Rad for making me really think about this. And it was interesting because after the 2nd week, I wrote down one of my notes. If it was straight up, would I take Chase Lucas over Will Harris? And at the time, I said no. But after this past week, and the more that Rad kind of talked me into it, made me think about it, thinking about what I've seen from Starling and also Gilmore and what they've been able to do on the outside. Last year, we didn't have the reliable outside corners, right? Amani struggled. We had a lot of inconsistency there with Okuda on the flip side. We had Jerry, but he missed time. So we needed a guy that could be flexible. This year, I'm very confident that Starling's going to make it. I think he's kind of a lock. And Stephen Gilmore, it's not perfect, but there's so much raw potential there. I don't think they're going to want to let him go. And because of that, I'm keeping him around, which I think allows for flexibility, which is why I'm keeping Chase Lucas and Will Harris I have getting cut. I'm a big Will Harris fan, so I'm not necessarily rooting for this. I like Will Harris, but it is a guy that the Lions drafted in Lucas. He is still under contract through 2025, and Will Harris is not. Because of that, I'm going with Chase Lucas. Finally, at safety, I have Kirby Joseph, I have Tracy Walker, Iffy, and CJ Gardner-Johnson, all as locks. Again, I think CJ is going to start, Tracy will be a backup, and I think Branch will start at the nickel until Branch proves that he can't start at the nickel, and then they can shake things up. With that, though, if they want to keep a 5th safety, which usually teams do, I think that next safety would be Brandon Joseph. I think after that, be Brady Breeze, who's not terribly far behind, but I think Brandon Joseph, you look at where he's getting his snaps, I think he's been efficient these last couple weeks. Special teams, as a run defender, willing to stick his nose in there, and even in coverage this past week, because if he comes into the season, hits IR, obviously the Lions could go to the practice squad or elsewhere, sign a new safety, add him to the roster so they could open up that spot, you know, after they get into the 53, then put him on IR. So bring him through the cuts, then put him on IR if they have to, and then they could bring a new safety in. I think that's a real possibility, which is why I think that the next guy up would be Joseph for the Lions. And final, at special teams, I have Riley Patterson, Jack Fox, and Scott Daly. Yes, I'm going with Riley Patterson. Though he missed it from 53 and the extra point, I think they keep Patterson around. But I do think there's a real shot, and it's just kind of hard to predict because we haven't seen him, that they do feel good about John Parker-Romo. And if the Lions said, hey, we cut Riley Patterson and Parker Romo's the kicker, would I be surprised? Not really, because we've seen a lot of those weird things at kicker over the last few years. It's just we haven't really got to see him, so I don't really know how to go with that. I feel like we kind of know what Patterson is. The extra point was not good, but he's only missed one in his career, in his short career. I think the Lions ride with Patterson, but honestly, that one I'm just not really completely sure on. I know we'll keep one, though. I don't think we're going to keep two. We may keep two. I don't know. I think we keep one. And then obviously on the bottom, the biggest things that affect it is going to be Emmanuel Mosley. If he's still on the PUP list, he's going to miss the first 4 games. If they take him off, we've had positive updates. Obviously, then he would have to count towards the 53, so we'll keep an eye on that one. Hooker, of course, if he stays on the NFI list, he's going to be out for 6 weeks, and then there will be that 3-week window to bring him back. Maybe they'll do that during the season and open up a spot, since he's going to be out the first 6 games with the suspension. So, really, it comes down to one final spot. And to me, it's between Dylan Drummond at receiver, or Chase Cota, Matt Nelson at tackle, Joseph at safety, and Will Harris at cornerback. It comes down to one of those guys to take that final spot. And to me, because of the potential injury there with Iffy, I could absolutely see them coming in with those 4 and then adding a safety back to that unit, which is why I don't have Joseph actually making the 53-man roster. Instead, I'm going to go with Matt Nelson. I'm going to say they keep 9 offensive linemen. Though this is really tight, it's why I parenthesed all of these, because I'm not really sure on this one. I'm going to say they lean Matt Nelson. I'm going to say he's had a better last 2 weeks. They like him as a 6th offensive lineman, and they end up keeping 9 offensive linemen, which means Drummond is out, Will Harris is out, Joseph is also out. So that's my 53 prediction. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'm probably going to be wrong, so don't hate me. I'm probably going to be wrong. Thank you for watching, and I'm out.